The state of the nation this morning. Yes, you've been reading the papers or paid attention to the news or comments, even on social media. I'm sure you would have seen it. It's that connected now, traditional media and new media. Well, Mr. Max Gbanite joins us now. He's a security consultant. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, so much happening, so quick and fast, such that before you know what's happening, it's all over the world because of the way the world is just intertwined in terms of communication, and they also have their response. People react to them. We quoted in our opening sequence how people read meanings into words, and all of those things have their effects. You may not know how people will respond to certain things, but they, bottom line, will respond. But let's look at some of these comments coming through from those who we call authorities and the kind of words they say and how the media responds it. What's your perspective on this mix?
Permit me to come back to this. Ms. Ogun had said something that really struck me while you were doing your opening monologue. And she said, why do people arrogate the power of God to themselves by predicting 2015 when we are in 2012? That is 3 years ahead. So politicians have really put this nation on harm's way. And when an elder politician, and in this particular case, a former head of state who knows about security, makes unguarded statement, it worries me. It worries me because General Buhari is somebody that I really respect. Prior to the election, I went on air and challenged Nigerians by saying, if PDP has not delivered, your option then becomes CPC. And I said that for one particular reason, that this is a general that formed a political party in 6 months and garnered the massive followership that he had at that particular point in time. And I thought then that he had an alternative to PDP. But days to the election, he made a statement which became the foundation for the insecurity that we have today.
Even though they argue with saying, well, we can't exactly say that is a direct consequence, but
well,
social matters.
This is my own perception, and permit me the right to have my own individual perception.
Insofar as your own fact and
yes. And that comment was that those who rigged the election or the polling station should be burnt alive. We lost 10 members of the youth service in Bauchi to that effect. The NBA have not thought it wise to take a legal action on such collateral statements that led to their deaths. That was when I began to again reevaluate my support of Buhari. Then recently, the papers, the media, according to the Minister of Information, have again reported the right thing, where he is cautioning INEC and made an inference that a dog and baboon will be blooded, and this he said in House of Service while addressing his followers in Niger State. It is not the best. It is not the best at this particular point in time.
I think it will also be important to also say that before those comments were made, there were already insinuations as to what will happen in 2015, even by alleged supporters or presumed supporters of the current administration. So that it's not just the comment that we're focusing on, or that we were focusing on in our monologue, but we're also focusing on presumed machinations, or is it presumed campaigns. They are like premature campaigns ahead of 2015 when we're still in 2012. Isn't that all a distraction?
It is indeed a distraction. If members of People's Democratic Party, especially the special advisors to President Goodluck Jonathan, begins to canvass for 2015, it is an indictment of the president that he has not performed. I think Jonathan should be given the opportunity to deliver on his promise, which is transformation and change. Nigerians are yet to get a fresh of this breath air that he promised us. And we have 3 years. There is no time. If he can deliver on the power sector, believe me, a lot of things can change for his fortunes.
But again, just allow me comment here, because we always say in everything there is always a first cause, and we have to go back to what Maupe asked. If the president's men or supporters had not started all of that about 2015, do you think the general would have said what he said at that point in time? Because at that point when they started all of that, it was almost too late before the president clarified issues by saying that he's not interested in 2015. By then they had gone too far talking about the next election, which is just 3 years away.
Suleiman, you're very correct in what you said. And that again shows the type of people a president picks as advisors. That one has a PhD does not mean they are knowledgeable. We have had people from the Niger Delta posturing the likes of Dokubo, hammering that the president has a right to second term. He hasn't finished the first term. Then we have had people in the north saying it is their turn in 2015. If you had not reported all this, how do we know? It comes back again to certain things that the media ought to just let alone.
No, that shouldn't.
Excuse me. Just a minute.
That can be part
of
what
news.
they say.
It's
no,
not
it is
news.
That is news.
Because the media editorial can say,
no.
We are
I think
in
we're getting it wrong
2010,
here.
2011,
Mr. Gbanite,
or
we're getting it wrong.
2012.
If anyone, I'm sorry to butt in there, but if anyone is saying anything with regards to 2015 and say, I will contest, or it is our turn to contest, that is some kind of news that the media will take, definitely. But when we talk about something that is not for the overall good of the profession, of the nation rather, that is unethical to the profession. Those are the unethical things they're saying that the media should stay off. And I'm quite sure that's what Mr. Mac
What is significant about somebody saying it is our turn in 2015 and you're drumming it up in 2012? When a reporter on a bit ought to be telling me that strategically that the power holding company of Nigeria has failed, that strategically that the strike in Lagos is paralyzing the hospitals. Do I want to know what happens in 2015? I want to live on the moment. I want to know that somebody in Ketu and somebody in Suleja have the same medical facility in Nigeria. I want to know about it. What happened to investigative journalism? Why do we have to practice proactive journalism? By bringing in negative verbiage from people
it's
into the
strange
papers.
that they have turned it on the media. For the fact that we had to comment on that and Maku's statement had to go on out there doesn't mean that the media is at fault here. For those who make some kind of outrageous statements and comments, those who should be leaders on both sides, whether you're ruling or you're in the opposition, is what the people are concerned about. That is why people say, from whichever divide you're from, when you make such statements, when all else fails, it's the ordinary Nigerian who is right here in Nigeria who doesn't have the privilege of even traveling to the next state that will suffer. That is why people are complaining about what is happening now. In any case, that just might give the security operatives a hell of a moment when all else fails.
It is indeed causing serious ripples within the security operative, because if you look at the way the security agencies are beginning to monitor the Boko Haram issue, the insurgency within the nation, there appears to be an appreciable a success story to write, bearing the recent attack at this day. So when a former president who's a very large respect within the Almajiri sector, within the northern sector of the nation, makes such a comment, he is believed. What I think the likes of General Buhari, whom I will still continue to respect as a former head of state, will be doing at this particular point in time, is traveling to Yobe State, traveling to Bauchi State, traveling to Borno State, and begin to tell the people, look, it is un-Islamic to kill Nigerians, a fellow human being. Look, when he begins to do this, he will be able to get respect from the South, and they begin to see him as a possible credible presidential candidate for that same 2015 he's talking about, because he has not taken side in this particular case. But he hasn't done so. Rather, he's contributing to a proactive overheating of the politics.
All right, as much as we can, because what we're doing is trying to look at politicians as a collective whole.
Yes.
You know, such that, I mean, comments could fit in here and there, but let's just focus on politicians, collective whole, and their responsibility here. But in terms of government, media personnel or experts, if they got their PhDs, I like to imagine they didn't buy it. But in terms of what the media reports and how the media reports it, there's nothing wrong in what the media reports if it is news. How they report it depends on the editorial team and what the editorial board or team deems fit. And we know where responsibilities lie, and regulatory bodies also know how to come in there. Because they could argue, for all you care to know, that the core assumptions of the hypodermic needle theory or uses and gratification theory, which are both content and medium-based theories, they could latch on that and say, we're doing what we have to do based on the theories of our profession. But politicians now, in terms of the way they conduct themselves, perhaps that should come into focus, and the way the people also internalize some of these messages, because some theories here will tell you people are just reacting based on their instinct, the basic instincts of what they have. Some will argue media messages barely reinforce what people already know, what people already are. So when we hear these messages, you won't hit the street, for instance. Some people here won't hit the streets, but others will hit the streets. Shouldn't we also be looking at society here that's saying, is there something wrong with the way we respond to certain messages?
Well, I just cherish the way you posited Media 101 to the viewers. And I don't believe there must be a gag order on the media. The media remains the fourth estate of the realm. The conscience of a nation is the media. But you're quite apt in being able to delineate the behavior and conduct of politicians. Let me digress a little bit and go to France. Opposition in France, led by Hollande, for 17 years, a socialist opposition, have bided their time and allowed a conservative governance like Sarkozy to carry out their orders, supported their governments until the appropriate time, and that was the election. And the issue now is to the people of France. Do you want to continue the essence of conservatism, or do you want to come back to a socialist government? But within that 17 years in Tarragon, they were doing grassroots works, touching bases to the people, reacting to people, because people are the reason for politics. And the end result is that Hollande beat Sarkozy. Transmuted to Nigeria, recently you showed us a group called Save Nigerian Group, made up of politicians and NGOs who are insisting that the oil subsidy probe must be followed or they're going to hit the streets. They have a right to that. But is that the best approach? I thought that is a political content material for Save Nigerian Group to now align itself with a political party and say, if the president or if PDP fails to address this, we are going to remind Nigerians that this same political party are corrupt, and that is why they did not follow on their own House-dominated recommendation in terms of prosecution on subsidy, so that you and I can be convinced come 2015 that their political lineage is where we should go. They are cleaner than PDP. Why overstretch security? Because now when you hit the street, security agencies must be pulled to come and protect you from another opposition attacking you. In the interim, the security is being overstretched. We, as your opening poll said, that we are sending troops to Guinea-Bissau. We might be sending troops to Mali. We have close to 13,000 peace support operation worldwide, with Nigerian troops involved. Then in the nation itself internally, our military, our police are overstretched. So why do you want to get involved in this kind of situation when in Lagos, for a whole week, you talked about the doctor strike in Lagos. I am yet to see the same favor of a Save Nigerian group saying, look, we are the self-righteous people.
What if they're studying this situation?
And they're saying we are going to go on the streets of Lagos to protest in favor of the doctors.
What if they have to study the situation first before they respond?
They have had enough time to study the situation between Lagos State and the doctors. You have really put it out there, but they didn't. What they want to do is you cannot go to the back door and get what you didn't get in the front door. Democracy is about patience.
Yeah, but
if you lost today, you wait for the next 4 years to make a point.
Because I know that you have people who will always say that, well, I'm not coming out there to vote because if I come out, my vote won't count and blah, blah, blah. But should that be sufficient all by itself to make people sit back? Because we have politicians who may have assumed that because the people won't do as much, they can, from their perspective, predict people, and hence they go about conducting themselves the way they think fit for them. If we, as people, as Nigerians, actually stand up enough, if you think we're not standing up enough, would all these breakbacks be happening?
Well, look, democracy is a marathon race. It is not a 100-meter dash. When you were in the university or probably in secondary school, the military were in power. All you knew was dictatorial tendencies. You came out of the university, we are still suffering from that military hangover. You see politicians who have taken tolerance and thrown it down the drain. Rather than compete and convince people for votes, they are killing each other. Look at Edo State. The number of lives that have been lost because somebody wants to be governor by all means necessary. It is wrong. That is the bad aspect of democracy. That's the same reason I say to those who claim to be in NGO, those media houses such as yours, at least in newspaper, we get opportunity to read editorial. In broadcast media, you should also have a free broadcast where you say to Nigerians, defend your right. These are the tenets of democracy. These are your rights under democracy. Do we have what I can call the Nigerian Bill of Rights? What is my right as a Nigerian? What is your right as a Nigerian? We keep referring to the Constitution, that I have a right to freedom of speech, right to vote. This is the time we can say to INEC, look, why hold a bogus election you cannot control? Can we compartmentalize our election processes by saying that no polling unit should be more than 500 people? At least you know one another. While the election in Senegal happened, nobody talked about digital data capture. In France, nobody talked about DDC.
You know, Mr. Gbanite,
these are all a hoax. We have wasted money into, yet we couldn't get the right.
Quite a huge sum of money, but
and
again,
we didn't get it right.
But again, for us as a nation, I think we should say it the way it is. If those in authority have been doing what they have promised the people, 1, 2, 3, and don't you expect that the 4, 5, 6, every Nigerian will be patient enough to say, since I've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will surely come. They haven't seen any of that. To the extent that you just mentioned Edo, it tells us that when you talk about Boko Haram, you talk about Edo State, you talk about Kogi, you talk about a whole lot of issues concerning security of the nation. It means that we're not getting it right, because you don't expect the ordinary Nigerian you just talked about, talking about Bill of Rights, to enforce some of these if the government haven't been able to do what they should do first. You talked about electricity, for instance. How far or how well can we say we have started on the path to have given the people some form of hope for the future?
Well, Suleiman, when you talk about electricity, it also falls into what I call the energy security. I am a componentry of strategic security environment, and electricity is one of them. My own personal experience, I live in Maitama, which, to quote and unquote, is considered a highbrow end of Abuja. I paid 25,000 naira to power holding company more than a year and 6 months ago for a single phase meter to be installed in my BQ, and the meter is yet to be installed, is yet to be to arrive, but somebody has cashed my money. Now, when they install these meters, the contractor bills PHCN for copper wires, but they use aluminum wires. So in this particular case, most of those meters are burning. So the PHCN failed to send in investigators. But let us go back to the blueprint for power holding that was written during the Yakubu Gowon era. There are blueprints that we have decided to discard. No particular housing unit should have at least 10 houses to a transformer, was what it used to be. But it's no longer the case today. Now, Baton Naji will speak all kind of American languages in terms of turning the power around. What about the cables that are moving this power from generation to transmission that have been there for over 50 years when armored cables were not even created?
As electricity language.
Have you been able to excavate these cables and change them? So when you haven't done that, then it means that the chances that will align the vehicle of energy have been derailed, because you can change transformers, you can expand on distribution, but the cable that brings in the juice from the hydro plant to the transmission is a faulty line. You come back to square one. Government have become an employment agency. You cannot create jobs for the almost 70 million Nigerians that want to work. Everybody can work in government agency. What is holding development in this country is that power sector taking off. Once it takes off, we can get to that particular point.
The courts are also involved in this mix, because ultimately, when they give a pronouncement, because if people say they're the last hope of the common man, if the common man is hopeless, of course, you know what can happen as a matter of fact when that happens. But we've seen increasing statements these days where it comes across as people losing confidence. I say that cautiously also, in the courts. When pronouncements are made, some of them can't even wait to appeal to God after Supreme Court. They go to the media, make certain statements. Isn't that another area we should seek how to correct it? And politics should not be mixing with some judgments which we see, such that these days people are questioning even judges, questioning court judgments. And these are all dangerous signals we see here.
Well, judiciary is also what we call judicial security. And that is why if the president is watching, in the American judiciary, the good thing about it is that government has resigned themselves that they can lose a case and win a case. In the case of Justice Salami, I'm not a spokesman for the judiciary. Please reinstate him immediately so that you can be seen as obeying the rule of law.
How does that affect the common man?
Which you inherited. Now, coming back to the common man, judiciary is made up of what I call tempestuous judges. There was a time when I was young, I can say this authoritatively, because my uncle was among the first judges in Zambia. And also I have an uncle that just left the Supreme Court, Justice Dennis Edozie. And in those days, you don't visit justices in their houses just like that. There is a register. Everyone that enters signs. At the end of the month, the DPO comes to collect such a register and takes it to the chief judge of the state, and they vet the register against cases that the judge is handling to make sure that no special interest visited the same judge. But today, we have lawyers who try cases in newspapers, make so much noise rather than go to court of law. We have issues where Lagos is in the Guinness World Book of Record for a land case that took 30 years to adjudicate. Bravo, Lagos State. When a common man should get justice within few months of filing a complaint. In the United States of America, the chief register of a court is not a lawyer by profession. He is a manager of court cases. There is what we call case flow management. when the intake of the case comes in and when the assignment judge assigns such cases to be heard. In this country, a judge adjourns cases or don't even show up because he has a catarrh. So the common man is denied justice.
Okay.
Therefore, he resorts to jungleism.
Trip this part in because we're running out of time here. Because, you know, we did ask also in the opening sequence that, truth be told, a lot of these people who are making this statement, a lot of politicians who vie for positions year in, year out, for donkey years, a lot of them have their children abroad. How should Nigerians internalize, how should Nigerians react to some of these messages which they read in the media or they hear people say all the time?
I have said this before. If you look at the pattern of those that committed suicide bombing, none is a Kanuri. If Abu Shakau is a Kanuri man, what immunes him from going to paradise? By being the actual suicide bomber and kill himself. If paradise is where suicide bombers should go. And you're very correct, politicians sequestered their family abroad and overhit the polity. It means that the level of intelligence in the nation is so low. We need to educate the masses. I want to go back to the state of Katsina. When the late President Yaradua was the governor there, he took education and the educating the Almajiris very seriously. And Shema, who is my friend who inherited that position, took it another step further. And that is why when Buhari lost the election in Katsina, there was no violence there. Because the enlightenment of the so-called Almajiri sect in Katsina has gone above board, more than that of Bauchi, more than that of Kano, more than that of Borno and Yobe State in that particular sequence. So we need to enlighten Nigerians. That's where you can do what I call positive, proactive media interaction with Nigerians, where once a week, maybe because Ms. Ogun has the followership, or you, or Solomon, who has the voice, can say to Nigerian youths, editorial from channels, your right to vote. You don't have a right to cause violence because a politician tells you to do so. You tell him to do that. But look at the church. The churches have become a money-making industry that they are no longer building morality. There is a serious decadence. How do you connect the church, the family values in this country, to what we have today? If you were raised right, then it becomes very difficult and abnormal.
Families also have a role to play here.
The family has to play a role.
Line.
But the family buys a cell phone for the child to cheat in exams. So we have lost it entirely, and we need a total remobilization of our thoughts.
Okay.
Infrastructural thinking needs to come into place. University needs to come into place. Professors don't have to write or sell handouts. They should be challenged to produce textbooks.
All right. Even though INEC get billions for voter education and telling them what to do or how not to go about it, perhaps they should also wake up to that responsibility.
They will not do that because they are spending money having conferences with West Africa, and they shouldn't have conferences in West Africa. They should have conferences with Nigerians and ask Nigerians, how do we better serve you on that election?
All right,
what is the sense of digital data capture? Let me tell you something now.
Oops, what?
Please allow me to say this before I leave. The housing unit that housed the data for the election doesn't exist. The same way I came here and talked about NCC, the housing unit that holds this important biometrics doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist where it should or
up to
at
today.
all.
Look, today NCC will tell you we have captured 91 million SIM cards. False. Wow. False.
Okay.
They don't have such information.
Perhaps they will
and I can prove them wrong.
Since their level of education is high, they will respond to it adequately and properly also.
I hope I haven't put you into trouble, really. But please, my closing remark is, politicians, temper your voices. Buhari, you know, if you were the president today, you would have arrested whoever made such a comment against you.